Respect is not owed to your age, but to what you stood for when no one else would. Sometimes it only takes 18 minutes to show a lifetime's worth of courage. Let us know in the comments section below. What would you do if you saw this unfold right in front of you? Logan Fisher didn't hate veterans. He just didn't get them. To him, they were like the weird stickers on the back of old trucks. Vietnam vet, Purple Heart recipient. All of it felt like leftovers from a different America. One he didn't relate to. One that had nothing to do with ringing up cereal boxes and sweepstakes flyers at Parkline groceries in rural Florida. Logan was 22, wore a name tag he didn't care about, and held a grudge against pretty much everyone older than 30. He moved like the store belonged to him, the kind of guy who leaned against counters during shifts and scoffed at small talk. If your back hurt, if you walked too slow, if you paid in change. Logan didn't hide his annoyance. It lived on his face. That's why no one really batted an eye when he rolled his eyes at the man with the limp. But what he did next, well, that's where the story stopped being just another Tuesday. Cliff Lashley wasn't in a rush, never was. The limp in his left leg, part shrapnel, part miracle, kept his pace slow but his spine straight. People had long since learned to move around him. He didn't ask for much, just bread, eggs, a bit of milk, and the dignity to get through checkout without being treated like a burden. Logan sighed loud when Cliff approached. "Man, it's always when I'm trying to clock out," he muttered, too loud to be accidental. Cliff didn't flinch, didn't look up. He placed his few items on the belt, one hand gripping the worn head of his cane, not for drama, but for balance. The other hand stayed near his side, trembling slightly from age or memory, maybe both. "You're holding up the line, Pops," Logan said. "There's no line," Cliff replied quietly. Logan laughed. "Not the kind that joins people, but the kind meant to separate them. You think just 'cause you got a limp I'm supposed to treat you special?" "I don't want to be treated special," Cliff said, finally meeting the younger man's eyes. "I want to be treated like a human being." That stare, it was quiet, not angry, but it carried something heavy, something that filled the silence so fast and so full, Logan couldn't help but try to shatter it. "You know what?" Logan said, and in one motion, palm open, impulse in control, he shoved Cliff's shoulder. It wasn't hard, but it was enough. Cliff stumbled, caught off balance. His cane clattered to the linoleum. For a moment it looked like gravity might win. Then, just as fast, it didn't. Cliff didn't fall, but the sound of that cane hitting the floor, it was like thunder in a church. The few customers in the aisle turned. One of them started recording. Another whispered, "Isn't that Cliff? The old war vet?" Cliff stood motionless, like he was back in a place where you don't move unless you have to. Then he slowly reached down, picked up his cane, and said nothing. Nothing at all. Logan scoffed and turned away, trying to look unfazed. "Whatever, man," he said, tapping on his register screen. Cliff didn't respond, but someone else did. 3 aisles over, an elderly woman dialed her phone with trembling hands. "I don't care who you call," she said, her voice low, urgent. "Someone needs to know what just happened here." Her granddaughter stood beside her, wide-eyed. "Grandma, what are you doing?" "Calling a friend," she said. The kind who doesn't forget men like Cliff Lashley. 18 minutes later, the sky would look different. But right now, inside this store, Cliff just stood. Not ashamed, not afraid. Jaws. Waiting, like he had on nights in Da Nang. Waiting, like he had when the firefight ended, but the silence was worse. Waiting, like a man who had learned that justice doesn't always come fast, but it does come. And Logan had no idea that the most unforgettable 18 minutes of his life had just begun. By the time Cliff stepped out into the parking lot, the air felt like it was holding its breath. He walked slow, not just because of the limp, which had never once slowed him down in his own eyes, but because something in him knew the moment had shifted. Not the kind of shift that changes your schedule, but the kind that rearranges everything. He felt it in the way people looked at him as he passed. Not pity, not shock, something else. The quiet was broken by the faint ping of a notification. Then another, and another. Inside the store, a teenage girl named Ellie sat on the bench near the coin machine, phone in hand, her face pale. She had caught the whole thing, from the moment Logan shoved Cliff to the stoic stillness afterward. She hadn't meant to film it. She was just scrolling Instagram, waiting for her dad to check out. But the sound of that cane hitting the tile had frozen her thumb mid-scroll, and when she saw Logan shove the old man, her gut twisted. So she hit record, and now the video had nearly 10,000 views in under an hour. "Hey," she said to her dad as he bagged groceries, Can we not come here anymore?" Her dad raised an eyebrow. "What happened?" And she showed him the video. He didn't speak until the end of it, just watched, jaw tightening with every second. "I surfed," he said quietly. "I know," Ellie replied. "Man's got a limp from something worse than age." He took out his phone and started texting, not out of outrage, out of duty. Cliff was halfway to his truck when someone tapped him on the arm. He turned slowly to see a young man, maybe 30, with a shaved head and a biker jacket standing behind him, phone in hand, screen still recording. "Sir," the man said, "are you okay?" Cliff's brow furrowed slightly, not used to questions like that from strangers who looked like they might normally cross the street to avoid him. "I'm fine." The man nodded. "Name's Cody. My uncle walked like you. Took a hit in Fallujah. He never let anyone push him around." Cliff gave a half smile. "Neither do I." "You're about to be real famous, sir," Cody said, lifting his phone. "This thing's already blowing up." Cliff looked at the screen. He watched the video in silence. The shove, the cane, the car. He handed the phone back. "I'm not interested in being famous." "Maybe not, but people need to see this." Cliff exhaled. Not a sigh. Something deeper. The kind of breath you take before a decision. "Just make sure they see the right thing." Cody nodded. "They will, I promise." Inside the store, Logan was on break, scrolling through his own phone while leaning on the soda cooler. His buddy Zach walked in from the stockroom, laughing. "Yo, you're viral, man." Logan looked up. "What?" Zach held up his phone. "You seriously pushed that old guy? Bro, you're everywhere." Logan grabbed the phone, eyes narrowing as he watched the video. The shove was bad enough, but it was Cliff's silence that made it worse. The way he just stood there, unbothered, untouched by the disrespect. The comment section was on fire. "Who is this punk? Name this store, I'm never shopping there again. Man with a limp stands taller than any of us." Logan's throat dried. This is bull. It doesn't even show what happened before." Zach shrugged. "What'd you expect, man? You shoved a vet." Logan flinched. "You don't know he's a vet." Zach didn't respond. He didn't need to. Half a mile away, Cliff sat at a red light, hands on the wheel. He wasn't thinking about the comments or the angles or the storm that was beginning to swell online. He was thinking about his brothers, the ones who didn't make it back, the ones whose names weren't trending. He was thinking about the promises they made to each other in the dark, the ones about honor, dignity, and always standing when someone couldn't. His flip phone buzzed on the dash. No number. He answered without hesitation. A familiar voice came through, calm, controlled. "Is this Staff Sergeant Cliff Lashley?" Cliff didn't speak right away. It had been a long time since someone used that tone with him. "Yeah." "This is Sergeant Marcus Tran. My father served under you in Quang Tri, 1970. You pulled him out of a hot zone after he was hit. I wouldn't exist if it weren't for you." Cliff swallowed. That name, Tran, it reached deep. "I remember your father. He was a good Marine." "Never forgot you," Tran said. "Neither did I." Silence passed between them, but it wasn't empty. "I saw the video," Tran continued. and I've got a few guys stationed nearby. You mind if we stop by the store?" Cliff hesitated. "Why?" "To remind people what respect looks like." Cliff stared through the windshield. The light turned green. He didn't move. "Make it quick," he said. "The bread's still in the back seat." Tran chuckled softly. "Yes, sir." As Cliff pulled away, a ripple started to form. Not just online, not just in comments. In real people with real skin, real hearts, and a memory that still carried weight. Across counties, across units, across old battalions and forgotten mailing lists, the story began to move. Not of a man who got pushed, but of a man who stood. At exactly 11:30 a.m., Logan Fisher got called into the manager's office. He assumed it was about the video. Maybe a slap on the wrist, maybe a formal warning. He was already practicing his excuses. The way Cliff had glared at him, the way the guy had been rude under his breath, the way it was all taken out of context. Jessica Raymond didn't speak right away. The store manager's office was too small for her authority, but she filled it anyway with that stern posture and no-nonsense stare she'd learned from 3 decades of working retail management. Her phone buzzed on the desk, but she ignored it. Instead, she folded her arms and watched Logan like she was waiting for him to fold first. "You know why you're here?" she asked. He shrugged. "Internet's having a meltdown over a misunderstanding." Jessica's brow didn't move. "You shoved a man, Logan. A man who served in the army longer than you've been alive." "I didn't shove him, Jessica tapped her screen. The video played again. This time Logan didn't even try to defend it. It was 1 second, he muttered. "That's all it takes," she said. 1 second to show the world exactly who you are." He sat in silence. Jessica sighed. "I can't make this go away. You're off the floor indefinitely. HR will be in touch." "So I'm fired?" "You're on leave," she said carefully. "Pending review. But you might want to start updating your resume." As Logan left the office, the store felt different. The usual hum of customers and barcode scanners was overshadowed by something quieter. Glances, whispers. He didn't like how they avoided eye contact, or how even the high school stock boy looked at him like a stranger. Outside, the sun was just starting to break through the late morning clouds. Customers were gathering near the entrance. Some looked up, confused, others excited. Then came the first sound. Not music, not a siren, a low, steady rumble, like thunder, but deeper. Then, chop, 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 chop. One man's baseball cap blew off as he turned toward the sky. Black specks appeared in the distance, growing larger with each second. The thudding beat of rotor blades echoed off buildings. The sound swallowed everything else: traffic, conversation, even thought. People froze. 4 Black Hawk helicopters were approaching in formation, sleek and dark against the Florida sky. Logan stepped out just in time to see the lead chopper bank slightly, its side door sliding open mid-air. "Is that the Army?" someone shouted. A woman clutched her child. An older man removed his ball cap, squinting skyward. From the front of the parking lot, a few customers began to film. Live streams fired up. Social media notifications exploded. The Blackhawks hovered just above the grocery store. Then slowly, precisely, they descended. The moment the skids touched down in the cordoned lot across from the store, uniformed soldiers began to disembark. Not with urgency, not with weapons drawn, with purpose. Leading the pack was Sergeant Marcus Tran. Sunglasses over his eyes, sleeves rolled up, a crisp patch on his shoulders showing his unit's insignia. He walked with the assurance of someone who'd never had to raise his voice to command respect. He wasn't smiling. He was remembering. Behind him, 2 more soldiers carried something wrapped in canvas, not a weapon but a folded flag. Another held a small case. Others flanked them, not as bodyguards but as brothers. Cliff Lashley waited at the edge of the parking lot. His truck was parked beside him, arms folded, posture proud. That limp wasn't any less noticeable. but it didn't seem to affect his height. Today, Cliff looked 10 feet tall. The soldiers lined up. The flag was placed gently in Cliff's arms. The box handed to him with a soft word from Tran. For a second, no one breathed. Then Sergeant Tran turned to face the store. "Cliff Lashley," he said, voice raised, "did not ask to be honored. He didn't ask for cameras. He didn't ask for this country's attention." Tran took off his sunglasses. But Cliff Lashley earned it. Applause broke out, slow at first, then a swell. Customers stepped out of the store. Employees joined. Jessica Raymond walked out beside the assistant manager, wiping at her eyes. The soldiers saluted. Cliff returned it, slow, deliberate. A teenage boy shouted, "He's in the video!" and pointed at Logan, who had retreated to the far end of the glass doors, pale and frozen. Phones turned to him. Whispers grew louder. Jessica turned, her voice cold. "You should leave." Logan looked like he might argue, but the pressure of hundreds of eyes and the weight of 4 helicopters still hovering nearby silenced him. He walked out the side door. Cliff didn't even glance at him. Tran turned back to Cliff. "My father told me," he said, more quietly now, "that you carried him 2 miles through mortar fire. You dragged him across a river with a bullet in your own leg. He said you didn't talk about it because heroes don't need to." Cliff said nothing. Tran extended his hand. "But I do," he added. "I need to say thank you." Cliff shook his hand. Firm. No fanfare. The soldiers didn't stay long. They didn't need to. They came to show something. Not power, not protocol. Gratitude. As they reboarded the choppers and rose into the air again, the wind from the blades kicked up hats, dust, and disbelief. The crowd cheered. Phones recorded until the last rotor vanished into the horizon. And Cliff? He just turned back to his truck, flag in one arm, case in the other, and drove away. Quiet as he came. 2 days passed. The store reopened with fewer customers, fewer employees, and a hole in its silence where Logan Fisher used to stand. He wasn't officially fired, not yet. But his name was no longer on the schedule. His name, in truth, had become too heavy for anyone to speak aloud. People talked in half sentences and glances. Some tried to brush it off as just another internet frenzy, something that would fade with the next trending scandal. But it didn't. Not this time. Because the man with the limp had a name, and people had finally started saying it. Cliff Lashley didn't care for interviews, but they found him anyway. First the local news, then a national outlet, then a podcast whose host called him the last quiet lion. Cliff sat for exactly 1 on-camera segment. He wore his old army dress coat, buttons polished, ribbons fixed, sleeves a little tight. He answered the questions with minimal words and looked into the lens like it wasn't glass at all, but a window to every living room in America. "I don't want anyone punished," he said. "I want folks to think. Just think before they speak. You never know what someone's carrying." The host nodded, visibly moved. "What were you carrying that day, Mr. Lashley?" Cliff stared off a second, then looked back. "My groceries," he said. "And a little patience." The clip went viral again, but this time it wasn't outrage. It was reverence. That same day, a brown envelope appeared in Cliff's mailbox. No return address, just his name written in tight black ink. Inside was a handwritten letter. "Mr. Lashley, there's no excuse for how I treated you. I didn't know your story, didn't even care to ask. But after seeing the way you stood through it all, I've never felt smaller. You didn't have to forgive me, but I want you to know I'm going to learn how to be better. I've already enrolled in a program for veterans support, and I'm going to start with listening. If it means anything, thank you. Logan." Cliff read the letter once, then again, then folded it quietly and slipped it into a drawer beneath a stack of old service patches, dog tags, and a newspaper clipping dated 1972 with the headline, "Local Hero Returns Home." That evening, Cliff walked to the small Veterans Memorial Park 2 blocks from his house. The bench there had his old squad leader's name etched in bronze. He sat for a while, just watching the trees sway under the setting sun. And that's when he heard the footsteps. He looked up to see a young man, maybe 19 or 20, approaching with careful steps. The kid wore a JROTC hoodie and carried a notebook under one arm. "You Cliff Lashley?" he asked. Cliff nodded. "My granddad said you used to run drills behind the school when you got home from Vietnam. Said you trained a whole bunch of us before we even knew we were going anywhere." Cliff gave a small smile. "That sounds like me." The kid stepped closer. "I'm shipping out next spring. I don't know if I'm ready. I was wondering if you could teach me something before I go." Cliff patted the bench beside him. "Lesson 1, he said. "You showed up." They sat there as dusk turned to dark, talking about everything but war, family, discipline, grit, how to iron a uniform without making it look like origami. The kid laughed. Cliff didn't. But his eyes did. Back at the grocery store, the community had begun leaving notes and flags near the checkout counter where the incident happened. Jessica Raymond had finally put up a framed sign. "Veterans will be served with respect at this counter and every counter. Always." Underneath it, she placed a laminated photo of Cliff, not from the helicopters, not from the news. Just one someone had taken years ago. Him standing beside a military display during a Memorial Day event, hand resting on the head of a German shepherd in full service vest. The caption read, "Still standing." The town changed after that, not overnight, but in the way that matters. People looked up more when they talked. They opened doors not just physically but emotionally. Teenagers asked questions, adults listened, and Cliff, without ever asking, became something more than a symbol. He became known. On the 1-month anniversary of the incident, the town hosted a Community Respect Day. No fireworks, no speeches, just tables for veterans to tell their stories. Cliff sat at one with a cup of black coffee and a tin of medals he never wore. A little boy sat across from him, legs swinging under his chair. "Did it hurt when they shot you?" the boy asked. Cliff raised an eyebrow. "Did what hurt?" "When the bad guys shot your leg." Cliff thought about it. "Not as much," he said, "as when people forgot why we fought." The boy nodded solemnly. Later, when most had left, a woman walked up carrying a paper bag. "Mr. Lashley?" Cliff looked up. "I believe these belong to you." She handed him the bag. Eggs, milk, bread, everything he'd been buying that day, paid for and packed. "From all of us," she added, "with thanks." Cliff nodded once and took the bag. As he walked to his truck, the limp was still there, ever present, but it didn't weigh him down. Not anymore, because when the dust settled and the world turned its eyes away, the town kept watching, and not out of obligation, out of respect.